to astrology, there are certain things that most people are aware of, and there are certain things that most people don't even know exist. Astrology is extremely vast. There are many different methods and avenues in astrology, and I decided to create an astrology iceberg to show to you guys what in astrology is usually very well known and what in astrology is completely unknown. For those of you who don't know how an iceberg works, when you create an iceberg, you take a topic and then you put all the things that are quite well known about that topic on top of the iceberg, and then you put the things that aren't very well known about that topic at the bottom of the iceberg. So let's get started with the astrology iceberg. The first things that you will see at the very top of the iceberg are sun signs, horoscopes, and mundane astrology. This is at the very top of the iceberg because these are the subjects of astrology that people usually know about and that they're usually aware of. Most people are aware of their sun sign. That is to say, you are an Aries, or you are a Libra, or you are a Pisces. A sun sign indicates to you what sign a person was in when they were born. However, a sun sign is merely a drop in the ocean of natal charts, which I will get to a little bit later down in this iceberg. Next up, we get horoscopes. Horoscopes are incredibly well known because horoscopes get published in magazines. They're all over websites. Most people know about horoscopes, and most people know to read the horoscope for their sun sign. Horoscopes aren't necessarily accurate. However, horoscopes are one of the most well-known forms of astrology. Horoscopes are very generalized, and it's usually written for a specific sun sign, and it's not tailored for a person's specific natal or birth charts. This is why horoscopes aren't always very accurate. Next up, we get mundane astrology, which is basically predictive astrology. Mundane astrology is when astrologers predict global events, when they predict changes in politics and in governments. Mundane astrology is when astrologers predict global events, and it's not necessarily meant for one specific person. Mundane astrology is also quite a well-known form of astrology, as many people want to know what's going to happen in the world before they actually want to know what's going to happen with themselves. And the further down the iceberg you go, you get moon and rising signs, natal charts, and sinistry astrology. Usually when a person knows their sun sign and they're quite versed with horoscopes, they will maybe venture further down the path and discover their moon sign and their rising sign. Most people will usually know their sun sign, their moon sign, and their rising sign before they actually venture into exploring their natal charts. This is known as the top 3, and this is what people are usually introduced to before they venture further down into the other avenues of astrology. So usually when a person is informed about their big 3, they might go even further and discover their natal charts or their birth charts. A natal chart is basically what I like to call a blueprint to your soul and your personality. A natal chart indicates to you what your fears are, your wants, your beliefs, your values, what you want to accomplish in life, what it is that you love, how you interact with other people, how you interact with the world around you. A natal chart is basically an indication of who you are. Natal charts aren't necessarily at the top of the iceberg because most people will know about their sun sign and horoscopes and know about mundane astrology and these predictions that astrologers make about the world before they even know about their own natal charts and birth charts. Next up is sinistry astrology. Sinistry astrology is basically compatibility astrology, but on steroids. Sinistry astrology is when you mash 2 separate birth charts of 2 separate individuals together, and you look at the relationships between the planets and the houses and the angles, and you see how these 2 people will interact with each other within a relationship. Each relationship has its different dynamics, and 2 different people will respond to each other's energies in 2 completely different ways. A sinistry chart indicates this to you. Further down the iceberg, you get transit charts, progress charts, and solar return charts. A transit chart is basically like a horoscope on steroids. Now, like I said, horoscopes are at the very top of the iceberg because this is what everybody knows about. However, transit charts are lower down on the iceberg and they're not necessarily that visible. Most people do not know that transit charts exist. However, they know that horoscopes exist. A transit chart is when you take the current movement of the planets and you lay them over a person's birth chart or natal chart to see what the relationship is between the person's natal planets and the current transiting planets. The aspects between a person's natal planets and a person's transiting planets can likely trigger certain events in their life, or it can usher specific changes within the native. Transit charts are a lot more personal than horoscopes. Horoscopes are basically casted for a specific sun sign, and it is meant for everybody who has that specific sun sign. However, a transit chart is casted for a specific individual and their particular birth charts. Transit charts are much more accurate than horoscopes, and it's actually a much better way to figure out what you will go through in the future and what is to come. Just to clear this out, a transit chart won't necessarily tell you exact events that will happen in your life. It just explains to you the different cycles that you will go through. We all go through different stages in life, where at one point in our life we experience certain emotions and experiences, and another point in our life we experience different emotions and experiences, and we undergo different levels of growth based on this. A transit chart will indicate this to you. Next up, you get progress charts. A progress chart is a chart that adds a day on for each year that you have been alive. So this means that the planets in your natal chart will shift one day for each year that you've been alive, and this indicates your progressed charts. We all change and we all grow, and we're not necessarily exactly the same when we are born compared to when we are perhaps 20 years old or 30 years old or 40 or 50 or 60. At the end of the day, our core personality remains the same. However, our values, our beliefs, and many different things about us changes based on our life experience. A progressed chart indicates to you how your personality evolves over time as you age. Many people have actually asked me, how is it that you get a natal chart, however people change as they get older? My answer to this is that the natal chart is basically the indicator of the core personality of the individual, and the progress chart indicates how this person evolves and changes over time. I find a progress chart just as important to look at as a natal chart when I am doing a reading and doing interpretations for clients. The way that you interact with other people, the way that you think, the way that you love, the way that you take action, all these different things will change as you get older. A progress chart indicates to you how you undergo these changes and what these particular changes are. Next up, you get a solar return chart. When each of us were born, our sun was placed in a particular degree within a particular sign. Each year, the sun does a 360-degree cycle throughout the entire zodiac, and each year, when it is our birthday, the sun returns to that exact position it was in within that degree of that sign each year. Now, when the sun returns to that exact degree within that exact sign on the day that you were born, you cast a chart each year. This chart will indicate to you what your upcoming year is going to be like, and this is called a solar return chart. A solar return chart is different every year because a solar return chart goes according to the current planetary transits. So it's basically like a screenshot of the planets and where they're located on your birthday, and this indicates to you what the rest of your year will potentially be like. Further down the iceberg, you get composite charts, horary astrology, and electional astrology. Composite charts are kind of like sinistry astrology, but not quite. Composite charts is when you take the two separate charts of two separate individuals and you mash it together in order to determine what this particular energy of the relationship is going to be like. So a sinistry chart shows you how two people will interact with each other and what the dynamics of the relationship will be like. A composite chart shows you more what particular energy is created through those people coming together. When we are separate from another person, we are our own individual. However, when we come together with another person, we create our own unique entity. When you are with another person, the impact that you have in the world around you is entirely different than the impact that you might have when you're an individual and solely alone. A composite chart shows you what is the energy imprint of a particular relationship or a particular friendship or association. Like I said, it's very different from sinistry charts, as a sinistry chart shows you how two people interact with each other. A composite chart shows you what these two people become when they are together. Next up is horary astrology, and horary astrology is when an astrologer casts a chart for a particular date and time that a person asked a question. Based on this date and time that this person asked this question, the results of the chart will indicate the answer to this question that the inquirer has. Horary astrology is a very good way to determine an answer if you do have a question. Next, we get electional astrology. In electional astrology, an inquirer will have a question about when is the best time to do a specific thing. The astrologer will then cast many different charts for many different dates in order to determine what is the best date for the inquirer to proceed with whatever it is they want to proceed with. So electional astrology is a really good way to figure out when is the best time to proceed with a particular action. An example of electional astrology is like asking an astrologer, what is the best date to get married? Maybe you might have many different dates to potentially get married and you're not sure which day to do it. An astrologer can tell you which one of those days will play out the best. Further down the iceberg, we have medical astrology, persona charts, and draconic astrology. Medical astrology is basically when an astrologer determines a diagnosis and a treatment for a particular person based off their natal chart. Medical astrology is a separate side of astrology where astrologers are able to determine specific ailments, sensitivities, allergies, diseases, or whatever the case may be within a particular individual through astrology. Next, we have draconic astrology, and a draconic chart is basically a chart that indicates your soul. A draconic chart indicates your higher self before it actually meets your lower body. It indicates what your soul's imprint is like. It indicates what you are like without your physical body, without the influence of the material realm and the physical around you. It literally indicates your most purest essence. Draconic charts are incredibly interesting charts as it actually shows you what your soul is trying to accomplish. Next up is persona charts. So shortly after we are born, the sun will transit over the different planets within our birth chart. When the sun transits over those particular planets and it reaches the exact degree of the planet, a new chart is then created for that particular planet that the sun is passing over. And this chart indicates the persona that you have in relation to that particular planet's archetype. So for example, we all have a Mars sign. Our Mars sign indicates how we act, what our willpower is, where a lot of our values lie. It indicates how much power we have. It indicates how much energy we have. It indicates where our power comes from. But our particular Martian personality has so many intricacies to it. Our Martian personality might have a conscious and a subconscious side. Our Martian personality might have its own desires. Our Martian personality might have its own particular fears that are completely separate from other sections of our life. So for example, we also have a Venusian personality, and this indicates how we interact with other people within our relationships. And our Venusian side, our Venusian personality, also has its own fears and its own values that are completely separate from our Martian personality. So in essence, this is what persona chart shows us. It shows us all the different personas within us and how these different personas play out in life and how they play out when faced with particular circumstances. And then last but not least, you get Uranian astrology and past life astrology. This is at the very, very bottom of the iceberg, and this is usually some of the most unknown sectors of astrology. Uranian astrology is an entirely different form of astrology. Uranian astrology was actually developed in the late 1900s, and it works in a completely different way as to Western astrology. Uranian astrology makes use of midpoints. A midpoint is the middle point between two particular planets. Uranian astrology also apparently makes use of fictitious planets. To be honest with you guys, I'm not very clued up and versed in Uranian astrology, but here is a Uranian astrology chart, and as you can see, it is quite complicated. And then last but not least, we get past life astrology. Past life astrology is basically observing the progression of the soul. Past life astrology is aimed at getting a person to complete their particular lessons and their particular goals that the soul has set out for them in order for them to avoid continuous reincarnation. Past life astrology, in essence, guides you to live a life that is in alignment with your soul's purpose in order for you to eventually reach transcendence. Your soul had particular lessons it had to learn and particular experiences it had to go through in each separate lifetime that it's gone through. Repeating those lessons and experiences in this lifetime might not necessarily serve you, and past life astrology is a form of astrology that teaches you how to live your life in accordance to what your soul's purpose is in order for you to reach your highest level of success and in order for you to eventually reach transcendence, which will allow you to avoid continuous reincarnation, which means that you do not need to be stuck in this continuous cycle of suffering. Past life astrology is actually the type of astrology that I specialize in. So if you'd like to get a past life astrology reading, please feel free to reach out. I do offer readings for these different chart types. If you're interested, I will add the links to my website below, and you can go check out my services to see which of these chart types I offer readings for. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Let me know in the comments what you thought of this video. Subscribe to my channel if you want to see some more astrology and spirituality videos. Make sure you check out my Patreon if you'd like to support this channel and also gain access to exclusive Patreon-only content. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.